So I think we can start now. We have counted the market shares of the European market, and we said that the majority is present, so we can start. Thank you very much for coming to the public debriefing of the last BEREC plenary. I'm very happy that you chose BEREC over Portugal versus Morocco. Thanks for coming. Welcome everybody who is watching us via the live stream on the BEREC website. I might be a little bit distracted during the meeting because on my screen I can see Portugal versus Morocco. So I will inform you about the result. It's absolutely prioritized. So okay. So welcome again. From the procedure, we will start with the presentations, and after the presentations, at the end of the debriefing, we will have time for questions. We will also pick questions from our Twitter account. So we cannot pick all the questions, but hopefully we can pick those that are of relevance for the majority of people present. As mentioned many times before, 2018 in the BEREC work program is focused on 5G and spoken in pictures. We think we can prepare the landscape for 5G, helping step by step the 5G crop to grow. And so at some point in time, the citizens and operators can harvest the 5G crop. And today we will introduce to you two important pieces of work on 5G, which is the BEREC Common Position on Monitoring Mobile Coverage and the report on infrastructure sharing. So let's start with the Common Position on Monitoring Mobile Coverage. Why is this so important? Firstly, I think reliable information, high quality information of mobile coverage is crucial for end users. It gives the transparency and therefore comparability, and this drives competition, which in turn drives investment. We have seen that across Europe several indices are ranking countries based upon coverage, and coverage is measured on with different methodologies, which leads to a certain, let's say, distorted picture. And from my perspective, from my personal perspective, most importantly, when it comes to 5G and IoT, reliable coverage information is crucial, for instance, to suppliers of smart home solutions. And I remember the 2016 stakeholder forum of BEREC. We had there a supplier of smart home solutions, and what he asked the regulators was to provide reliable information on mobile coverage. So, and this is what we have done. We have developed a common position on mobile coverage. And already in 2017, we had published a preliminary report on monitoring mobile coverage. And now this time we have come to a common position, which we would like to consult with all the stakeholders. So what are the draft common positions now? First of all, the technical specifications for monitoring mobile coverage in Europe. From our perspective, NRAs should choose either of the following criteria for technical specification for monitoring the coverage: the strength of the signal received, or a minimum probability of successful service reception. So we think that the availability of the received mobile signal power is an indication or indicative measure towards the definition of the level of coverage. So we also think that NRA should consider applying an appropriate threshold to the available mobile signal, and in particular on this technical criteria, we have provided some questions to the stakeholders to find out what the threshold should be, because we see a variety of thresholds used across Europe. The second common position is the use of signal predictions for mobile coverage estimation. We think that NRAs should base their coverage estimation on coverage calculations and predictions whenever it is not economically or technically possible to carry out field measurements of the whole country. And an NRA may elect to generate coverage prediction and publish information themselves, obtain the results of predictions from operators and publish information themselves, or use a third party to generate the coverage prediction and publish the information. The common position number 3 is ensuring the accuracy of coverage information provided to the public. So NRAs should verify the reliability of mobile coverage information using, where appropriate, field measurements, noting that for technical and resourcing reasons, it may not be possible to make widespread measurements. And NRA should also ensure statistical robustness of the measurement methodology. And common position number 4 is concerning the availability and presentation of mobile coverage information. NRAs should strive to provide easy to access accurate mobile coverage information to the widest possible range of consumers. So the goal is to maximize access, in particular, for instance, via apps, website, and open data. So, and we also think that NRA's mobile coverage map are also meant to complement and feed into the EU mapping platform. So we are publishing these common positions for consultation now, and we want to get stakeholders' view, especially on common position number 1, where we put forward specific questions like, should BEREC define common thresholds? What thresholds would you consider appropriate? And what would be the rationale for such thresholds? The public consultation will start today and for a period of 4 weeks. So I only can warmly invite you to give input, because I think this is one of the crucial questions we have to solve, and we would really we really think that we can make a very important contribution, not only for end users but also for a rollout of IoT and 5G in Europe. So the second document I would like to introduce to you today is about infrastructure sharing. This work is, for me, a building block of our 5G focus for this year. And I think it's, if we get infrastructure sharing right in Europe and we can have a consistent approach across Europe, it is of utmost importance for a swift rollout of 5G. What we are presenting today is a descriptive report, and we envisage to develop this report to a common position, and hopefully we can present after plenary 4 this year a common position or a draft common position for consultation. And now I would like to hand over to my colleague Blaise, who will present the details of this report.
Thank you, Johannes. As you just mentioned, it's really a report on existing information we got from the regulators. It's structured in 3-4 information parts. First one is to have a look at the current regulations and current legal framework in different countries, and to have a look at some specific points which are of interest for sharing arrangements. First of all, whether there is a public information on sharing opportunities in different countries. We see different situations in EU countries, and so we are discussing that in the report. We are looking whether there is a notification of sharing agreements to the regulators. when usually regulators can ask for such sharing arrangements, but in some cases these sharing agreements has to be provided to the regulators without having the regulator to ask for it. There is a look at whether there are some obligations to share that are stemming either from a ruling from the regulator or from spectrum licenses. We are looking at dispute resolution, where pretty much all NRAs have the possibility to have a look at difficulties between two partners of a sharing agreement. And in some countries, there is some public guidance on sharing that have been provided, such as guidelines. In the second part of the report, there is a look at current sharing agreements with some examples. We are first looking at what are the types of sharing, like passive sharing, active sharing, spectrum sharing, roaming, and other types of sharing that could occur. And there is a discussion on the assessment on sharing agreements, with have a look at the remedies and concerns that have been developed for some cases that are described in the annex to the report. Then there is a look at the benefits that are stemming from infrastructure sharing arrangements, and such benefits can be as to provide competition where two networks cannot be deployed. For example, if you go in a very remote area where the incentive to roll out a mobile network might be very limited because there's not many consumers. If you want to bring competition there, maybe with some sharing arrangements, the consumers can have a choice with 2 or 3 operators. Second thing, obviously, with sharing agreements, you will end up with some cost reduction, both in CapEx and in OpEx. Sharing agreements has also been a means to help the introduction of a new player. For example, when a new player tries to roll out its network, it's difficult to have a very wide coverage of the country at first, so you can have some roaming arrangements to help the operator get into the market. It's also a means to accelerate network deployment over the country when you've got more sharing. And finally, it's linked to the cost reduction of the rollout. You can have a decrease in retail prices as a result of that. And if I look then at the challenges and the barriers of infrastructure sharing arrangements that are also described in the report, for example, there can be an insufficient space in existing masts. If you want to put several antennas from different operators in the same mast, maybe the mast is not robust enough. There can be also some problems with the price to get access to the site. There has been some difficulties related to electronic field emissions and the impact on the public, where it might be difficult to make sharing because of that. The coordination effort that needs to be done between sharing partners might be also a hinder to sharing agreements, and that leads to some extended period for planning and decision making when you have to make an agreement with your partner before you are rolling out, for example, on the site. There can be also some technical issues when two operators have a different equipment suppliers, maybe sharing of it might be difficult. You can end up with some decreased level of competition between the sharing partners. When you look for technology evolutions, you have a sharing, for example, in 3G and 4G, and then you are rolling out 5G in the future. How that is possible or not within the sharing agreement. And while you have, in general, can have some competition issues, either between the partners or between the partners and the other competitors in the market. So that's kind of description of the challenges and barriers that you could find in the report. Finally, the report is looking at future evolution of sharing arrangements and 5G, how 5G can have an impact on that. And first of all, we see that more sharing will probably be needed for 5G deployment. for mainly two reasons. We will have denser networks. We're looking to higher frequency bands. There will be the rollout of small cells. And small cells is to have access, for example, to streets and bus stops or lamp lights. And this might need to have some sharing to be defined. There is also the need to provide fiber access to all the mobile sites, and that also might need some for sharing. New partners might be involved in the sharing, like municipalities or verticals. Municipalities, I explained, with lamp lights or access to the roads, but verticals may have a role in that as well. What we see also is sharing is already possible in most countries. There is already a framework, so maybe the framework can enable new sharings to happen. And finally, we really need to have a look at ensuring that sharing agreements do not impede 5G deployment. The really point is to ensure that 5G can be rolled out efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blaise, for elaborating the report. Maybe as a conclusion, during our upcoming plenary in October, we will discuss the level of the bar of ambition for the upcoming common position on infrastructure sharing. Hopefully we can set the ambitions at a level where it is really of great use for the industry and for Europe. And as I said, this report is only the starting point for further work on this topic. Small sidestep, Portugal versus Morocco, 1-0, and guess who scored? Of course, Ronaldo. Okay, so then let's move on. The third report I want to present to you today is about Layer 2 wholesale access products excluding Ethernet-based lease lines on Market 4. BEREC has already in 2015 and 2016 analyzed the Layer 2 wholesale access product imposed as a remedy on Market 3A and 3B. We have made a common position on the wholesale access products in 2016. And in order to get a deeper insight now into these products and to contribute to a more consistent regulation of access products, we have investigated now the Layer 2 wholesale products on Market 4. So we have seen that Layer 2 wholesale access products are currently imposed in 15 countries on Market 3A, 15 countries on Market 3B, and 6 countries on Market 4. The main motivation to impose such remedies on Market 4 was to enable alternative network operators to offer high-quality retail communication services to businesses and or to replicate such services of the SMB operator. And compared to leased lines, a Layer 2 wholesale access product has the advantage to be less costly and still has sufficiently high quality level to be used for high-end business customers. So we have identified a very long list of common characteristics. You can see the list here, but compared to Market 3A and 3B, in particular on bandwidth and quality of services, they differ from the products that we have imposed on Market 3A and 3B. On the very long run, I think we will develop something like a common position on that topic. But first, maybe you are aware of Article 63 of the upcoming European Communication Code about transnational end-user demand, where BEREC has to issue, or if requested, can issue guidelines, in particular on technical specifications, if there is a request from stakeholders, the Commission or some NRAs. And I think this is the basic work in order to get these guidelines done if requested. And what we said at our plenary is that this is an extremely helpful and useful work for NRAs who are considering currently to impose such remedies on market 4, and we are really doing a contribution to a more consistent application of such remedies. Post-merger and acquisitions market development report. We have started already in 2015, or in 2015 we decided to make our own research on post-merger effects, because we were approached by many stakeholders who had made their own calculations and assumptions and draw their conclusions from mergers in Europe. And so we decided to do our own investigation. So therefore we investigated 3 mergers that happened the last 5 years in Europe. We investigated the Hutchison-Orange merger in Austria in 2013, the Hutchison-Telefonica merger in Ireland in 2014, and Telefonica-KPN merger in Germany 2014. We did basically two analyses. First of all, we wanted to analyze the price effects. Therefore, we built price baskets for low, medium, and high usage, and we have calculated them based on detailed tariff data that we bought from a consultancy, and we used country-specific usage data. And what we have done from a methodology point of view, we used the differences approach. That is a methodology that was developed by the European Commission together with ACM and RTR in their post-merger study they did. So how does this methodology work? We looked at the price developments in these 3 specific countries, and we compared the price development before and after the merger, and the groups were put together as such that the price developments before the merger was very similar to the affected markets, and so to have a high probability that we could single out the merger effects after the merger, or the price effects after the merger. We did also some evidence on quality effects for Austria and Germany, but to be very frank, this is a more difficult exercise than to analyze the price effects. So what is the outcome of our investigation? First, the Austrian case Hutchison-Orange, because this is the case where we had the longest row of data to analyze, and because this transaction was authorized in December 2012 already, and the merger was subject to commitments. First of all, the European Commission wanted to facilitate the market entry of a new network operator, and therefore spectrum had to be divested to a potential new MNO. Spectrum was also put aside in the upcoming multiband auction at that time. And the second remedy was an upfront agreement with one MVNO, and then a reference offer had to be put up for up to 16 MVNOs with wholesale access of up to 30% of Hutchison's network. So what were the results? What we can see based upon this methodology, that there were significant relative price increases in the years 2014 and 2015. Only in 2016 the effect became considerably smaller and statistically insignificant, likely caused by competition from MVNOs, which in the meantime gained a significant market share. But on the other hand, the MVNO remedy appears to have taken more than 3 years to become really effective, and that we could see a significant effect in the market. Okay, the next case that we have investigated was the Irish case between Hutchison and Telefonica. This transaction was authorized in May 2014, also subject to commitments. There was different to Austria, where we had a per minute price scheme, or per minute and per megabyte price scheme. Here we had a capacity-based wholesale access to 2 MVNOs before the acquisition of up to 15% of capacity, and a spectrum divestment in order to encourage one of the MVNOs maybe to at one point in time turn into a full MNO. And the second part was an amendment to the network sharing agreement that has been agreed between Meteor and O2 to protect competition from Meteor. So the results that we have seen that this merger also led to statistically significant relative price increases in the short to medium run. But the magnitude and the persistence of these effects vary across different usage baskets. And what we also have seen that the effect of MVNO remedies was rather small. And in the meantime, I think one MVNO has again left the market. So in the third German case was the merger between Telefonica and KPM, formerly known as O2 and E+. And the transaction was authorized in July 2014, also subject to commitments. And there was the commitment to sell up to 30% of the merged entity's network capacity to 1 to 3 MVNOs. There was also the obligation to divest spectrum and assets to a new MNO, but finally no new MNO showed up. And there was also the extension of the existing wholesale agreements to MNOs and service providers. So here the results that we have seen that there is evidence of price increases, at least in the medium run. But here in this case we have to say that the results should be treated and interpreted with caution. We think that the changes in the specifications were not very robust, and what we have also seen that no data was included from MVNOs, which in the meantime gained a market share of almost 20%. And so we really would say that in the German case we would treat this the results a little bit with caution. So in all 3 cases, there is some evidence, at least, that the studied mergers led to price increases in the short to medium run. In case of Austria, even up to 3 years after the merger in the Austrian case, because an effective competitor from the MVNO side entered the market after 2 years, and until you saw the effects on the market, it took up to 3 years. On the other hand side, we've also investigated the effects on quality on service, which is much more difficult to assess. However, what we could see from evidence gathered, which encompassed in particular network testing by an outside company in Germany and Austria, we have seen that some evidence points to a negative effect, at least in the short and medium run, considering in particular that it is a huge effort to integrate 2 networks, and the effects are clearly seen and experienced by users. So not a big surprise in this respect, but in the short term there was a negative impact for customers. So, and what is from my perspective most importantly, that the MVNO remedies, even if you, for instance, in the Austrian case, have an upfront buyer, so that the remedies may take considerable time to become effective, and in some markets we have seen that they are not sufficiently affected at all. So this is what we have seen now from, or the conclusions and the lessons learned from these three mergers, and happy to take your question on that later on. So what we have done in the last plenary as well was we intensified our cooperation with our colleague from India. In 2017, BEREC made a study trip to India to meet or to build a relationship with the Indian regulator, who has done a lot of work, in particular on net neutrality. Please don't forget that India is the largest democracy on earth, and they are doing considerable work on net neutrality. And therefore, we not only signed a memorandum of understanding, but also a joint declaration on net neutrality, where we wanted to lay down our common understanding, and not more than that, a common understanding of the building blocks of net neutrality rules, and we emphasized the willingness of both sides to develop regular exchanges regarding the implementation of these rules. And by the way, our Indian colleague, Mr. Sharma, made a very impressive presentation about what is India doing in the digital area, in particular of digital IDs and digital health services. So it was very, very impressive to see that they have established a system of identification, payment, using health services, easy to access and with low barriers for consumers, and they are really, really a role model, I would say, in this area. And last but not least, but on the contrary, in the margins of the meeting in Poland, we had a meeting with 6 economies from the Western Balkans, which were Montenegro, Macedonia, Albania, Serbia, Bosnia, and Kosovo. As you know, the European Commission is about to launch a digital initiative for the Western Balkans. The aim is to lead these economies closer to Europe, speed up the process of accession, and Commissioner Gabriel asked BEREC to support this process. We happily accepted, and we are very much committed to support this process to bring these economies closer to Europe. 4 of them are already observers within BEREC, and they are actively contributing in our expert working groups. And now the goal is to support these economies and the national regulators in capacity building. One of the major building blocks of this cooperation is also to look at roaming and try to integrate this region via abolishing roaming rates, and maybe in a later stage then expand the roaming system that we have with Roam Like at Home to this region as well. Because we learned that this region or the citizens in these regions are very much impacted by borders that 20 years ago did not exist. So roaming is an extremely important symbol for this region, and so the first step will be that this region will integrate itself via abolishing roaming, and in a second step we can extend this to Europe. And BEREC will be happy to contribute to the process of bringing these countries closer to Europe. So what else have we adopted? Just a few remarks. We have, and this will be published today, we have adopted the BEREC report on termination rates at European level, and we have adopted the BEREC annual reports for 2017 to be published in these minutes. So what's next? So the next plenary will be from the 3rd to 5th October in Portorož in Slovenia, and the next public debriefing will be 1 week later at the 10th of October. And as a safety date, I want to mention that on the 17th of October we will have our annual BEREC stakeholder forum. So that's it from my side, and now let's open up the floor for questions. Please, Aurélie.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Maybe one question on net neutrality. So we answered, everybody I think in this room, the consultation on net neutrality. And could you tell us a bit more what are the next steps on BEREC side regarding any report on that consultation or any, I don't know, new guide?
Thank you very much for this question. It will go according to the work plan. We are now looking at the results, and I think in plenary 3 we will have the consultation.
First discussion and plenary 4 adoption.
Yeah, okay. We will have a discussion on the results in plenary 3 and then adoption in plenary 4. So I think that this will be timely for the deadline for the European Commission to evaluate the net neutrality rules.
So no more second consultation?
No second consultation on that.
Maybe just to continue.
Okay. Federico Poggi from Fastweb. About the slides on the merger cases, in particular the German one, you referred by a problem with the specification. I didn't understand what do you mean by specification. And then I have a second question on the same report. If there is a particular reason why you decided to not to analyze the impact of the mergers on investments in the market.
Yeah. So first on the investment, simply there is a lack of reliable data. So we didn't have the data, so we couldn't investigate that. And number one on the specification, my colleague.
Well, on the specifications, the statistical analysis that we carried out, and there is many different models that are run through, and some of the models were statistically significant, where others were not. So that's why we said the results are not that robust as it was the case in Austria, for example.
Thank you, Johannes. Just to follow up on Aurélie's question with regards to net neutrality work stream. So the report is one action that you are intending to conclude by the end of this year. What are the actions foreseen beyond that in terms of the whole evaluation process of the currently existing setup?
So I think most importantly, we are currently working on the work program for 2019, but as far as we can see today, we will go into an updating of the net neutrality guidelines in the coming year. From today's perspective, I have to say, it's not finally decided, but most likely we have gathered experience in the meantime. Many questions were asked to BEREC. We have already cases, and so we think it would be appropriate to update the guidelines. So in 2019, it's 3 years from issuing the guidelines, so we think that's appropriate.
Sorry about the GSMA. On the Austrian merger, on the quality side, as you know, probably GSMA has conducted a study on that merger, which leads to quite different conclusions. And you said that your conclusions are not yet to be considered definitive because there was not sufficient time. I mean, to what extent will you consider that to be interlocutory? Those conclusions, or to what extent do you think those conclusions on quality are definitive or can be modified with more information and data?
So I think we are quite confident on the short term that we see these effects. So, for instance, in Austria, we have seen customer complaints soaring at our customer dispute resolution team. So we have seen that absolutely. I know you have presented your studies to RTR, and I think, at least from my perspective, that we didn't look directly on the same things. I think you had more a focus on investment, which there was an effect as well because of if you integrate networks, that requires huge investment. But from a quality perspective, I think the results are robust.
So, Thomas Lohninger from the NGO Epicenter Works. First, thank you for the presentation. Coming back to net neutrality, item 12 of the draft agenda of the last plenary meeting was an exchange of experiences about the implementation of the net neutrality rules. Can you share any information, not about particular cases, but about the nature of the net neutrality violations that were discussed? And adding to that, particularly with an evidence-based approach to an upcoming review of the guidelines, BEREC thankfully has implemented the IS portal where it collects and aggregates consultations and information from all NRAs, including decisions from those NRAs. And particularly in light of the recent case of decisions in the Vodafone case, it wonders me why none of these decisions are in the BEREC portal, as they would clearly be highly relevant for harmonized implementation of the rules in such a similar product that exists in 9 different European markets.
Thank you very much for the question. We have decided 1 year ago that we have a regular exchange on concrete cases during the plenaries in order to ensure a free discussion. I cannot go into detail. What we regularly discuss is in particular cases that we see across several markets across Europe. We can also see that investigations are taking longer than maybe expected or sometimes wished by stakeholders. So it takes some time to publish these cases on the website, but we are committed to do so. And well, maybe one word on the nature of cases. What we have seen that on net neutrality, roaming plays an important role if you can use zero rating offers in the roaming case. So this is one of the questions we have in several markets. So this is what we, for instance, discussed, and we have not seen concrete, as far as I remember, concrete decisions that were presented last time in our last plenary.
Hi, Dean Bubley from Disruptive Analysis. On the coverage monitoring, is there anything that you're thinking about specifically around indoor coverage, either in residential or commercial industrial properties? Because that's obviously going to become increasingly important with IoT. And also, beyond that, almost like going from coverage of area to coverage of volume, because you're going to have potentially devices both in buildings, it could be in the roofs or in the basements, but also flying objects like drones as well.
There. Yes, in the common position in the introduction, you will see some key elements from a user's perspective. We are describing the different ways a user is accessing the network, and there's many ways. It can be indoor, it can be outdoor, it can be in transportation. You can access it with different devices. It would not be with a smartphone, a feature phone, or a home router. And these different cases, if you add them up, you can end up with 100 of different situations, and it's impossible to provide to the public coverage information that encompasses all these situations. So the idea is more to provide an information with different thresholds or different a few situation. We can say as having coverage, having good coverage, very good coverage. That would give the user an idea of the type of coverage he can expect. But not specifically, this is you get a chance to get indoor coverage with a smartphone, or here you will have in-transport coverage with such type of devices, which would not be practical. So we are somehow tackling it, but not tackling indoor as such.
Oliver?
Sorry, Tony Shorthold from Talaj. Just in relation to the infrastructure sharing report, is that just focused in the context of 5G, or does it also cover fixed deployments?
Okay, it's mobile rollout. It's mainly based on experiences from the regulators, and experiences from the regulators are mainly based on 2G, 3G, 4G. 5G experience is yet to be made. It's more forward-looking at this stage. So the main information that are in the report are really based on existing situation.
Hi, Oliver Fuchs from ACTA. Does the mic work now? Okay, sorry. On the report on the Layer 2 wholesale access products, you said usefully, and you were making the link to the EECC, that under Article 63 there might be some type of demand-based transnational market identification, and you said that notably in that context, if called upon, BEREC would consider developing the report further towards a common position. Imagining that that won't happen, is it in the cards that you will take this forward with a certain predefined time frame, or what are your expectations towards this?
I cannot give you an exact answer. What we know so far is that in next year's work program, it's not foreseen, or from today's perspective, it's not foreseen. But for 2020, it's if there is no demand to BEREC or no request, then it has to be seen. It's a question of priorities. So, and in this context, I would like to mention one thing. The code gives a lot of responsibilities and a lot of new tasks to BEREC. BEREC is the smallest agency, or BEREC office is the smallest agency in Europe, and we have received already responsibilities and tasks under the TSM, which we had to fulfill without further resources. And now it's really the time to speak out and say, with additional 9 guidelines to keep them up to date with all the responsibilities we have received. It is more than timely to resource BEREC office accordingly in order to get all the things done with the highest possible quality.
Fabrizio Cortesi, Huawei Technologies. Could you comment more regarding the infrastructure sharing part of the report that you mentioned at the beginning? I mean, were there any recommendations as well in terms of the guidelines that the municipalities, for example, in the member states would have to respect in order to facilitate the site construction approval? So you know how to improve the procedure for the site construction approval at the member states level. Were there any improvements or any suggestions to the administrations?
Yeah, at this stage, this report is already factual reports on the existing things. when we come to recommendation or to go on best practices and common position, it's really what we are going to do now. So we have done a report really to have an exchange of what's existing in different countries, that the NRS know themselves each other better, and then really that's where now the discussion is starting to see, okay, now where we go together, what is important, what we can do to help 5G to be more to come rapidly and efficiently. So this recommendation part is really what needs to still to be done. And we have, well, to plenary 4, we are having a target. First, as Johannes said, in plenary 3, we'll have a first exchange on the subject, and we would like to provide a document by plenary 4.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just a final question. The BEREC measurement tool, the tender is already out. Has there been taken a decision, or who will take the decision on the final winning bet on the tender, and when can we start measuring?
Well, we are working on that. We have received offers, and the decision will be taken in a few weeks. Maybe a last question from Twitter. How will 5G deployment impact net neutrality? Well, you can put it the other way around as well. How will net neutrality impact 5G deployment? We don't know yet. We have received, we had a consultation out, and we are still evaluating the results from this consultation. We don't know yet. That's the question I can give now. Sorry, that's the answer I can give now. Sorry. So if there are no further questions, then thank you very much for coming. Enjoy summer, enjoy the FIFA World Cup, and I wish all the countries that were successfully qualifying all the best for the World Cup. Thank you very much. Have a nice summer, and see you at the latest in October. Thank you.